Welcome to Spaceverse, your portal to cosmic adventures. The search for alien life is a fundamental pursuit for many astrobiologists, and over the years, there have been a few instances where scientists thought they might have discovered evidence of life beyond Earth, particularly through the study of meteorites. Meteorites, which are pieces of space rock that fall from space to Earth, hold the potential to reveal crucial information about the early solar system and the possibility of life elsewhere in the universe. As fragments of asteroids or comets, they are essentially time capsules, offering us a glimpse into the distant past long before the formation of life on Earth. However, one of the major challenges when studying meteorites is the risk of contamination. Between the time they land on Earth and when scientists are able to collect and analyze them, meteorites can easily become contaminated by Earth-based bacteria. This contamination can complicate efforts to determine whether the meteorite contains genuine extraterrestrial life or if the organisms are simply earthly intruders. The presence of even a small amount of Earth bacteria could make it difficult to draw clear conclusions about the origins of any biological material found on the meteorite. To address this challenge and avoid the risk of contamination, two cutting-edge space missions were launched in recent years: NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission and Japan's Hayabusa 2 mission by JAXA. Both of these missions were specifically designed to retrieve clean, untouched samples directly from asteroids and return them to Earth for further analysis. By collecting samples in space, where contamination from Earth-based life is nearly impossible, scientists hope to find clues that could answer the age-old question of whether life exists elsewhere in the universe. It was during the analysis of samples from the asteroid Ryugu, brought back by Japan's Hayabusa 2 mission, that researchers from the Genge research team had a truly striking moment. When examining the samples under a microscope, they observed something that looked remarkably like bacteria. This discovery, while still under investigation, raised fascinating questions about the possibility of life beyond Earth and whether certain forms of life could survive in the harsh conditions of space. The findings sparked intense debate among the scientific community, with some arguing that it could be evidence of extraterrestrial life, while others remained cautious, suggesting it might simply be a result of contamination despite the meticulous care taken to prevent it. This discovery quickly spread online after the study was released. But here's the key point. The Genge team ultimately determined that what they found was not alien life, but Earth bacteria that had contaminated the sample. In this video, we'll explore the study in depth, starting with why the search for life on asteroids matters, what the researchers actually discovered, why they believe it was contamination, and what this all means moving forward. So, why do we even care about the idea of finding life on asteroids? Well, the obvious reason is that it would be direct evidence of life beyond Earth, something that would change our understanding of our place in the universe. But it's more than just that. It could also help us unravel one of the biggest questions in science. How did life actually begin on Earth? The most widely accepted explanation right now is called abiogenesis, which suggests that life emerged naturally from the right combination of non-living ingredients, like carbon-based molecules and amino acids, that were already present on early Earth. But then that raises another question. Where did those building blocks come from? Some scientists believe they could have formed naturally through Earth's own chemical processes. But another possibility is that they were delivered from space, carried to Earth by asteroids and comets during a time when the solar system was still young and chaotic, with frequent impacts from roaming space rocks. This idea is supported by the fact that comets and asteroids contain water ice and organic molecules, and may have even contributed much of Earth's water. There's also an alternative theory called panspermia, which goes even further. It suggests that life itself, microbial or otherwise, might have hitched a ride on space rocks and actually seeded life on Earth, explaining why life appeared so quickly after the planet formed. So, instead of just looking for the building blocks of life, panspermia suggests that fully formed life could already exist on asteroids themselves. This idea isn't exactly new, it's been around in some form for thousands of years. But it entered more serious scientific conversation in the mid-1800s, around the time Charles Darwin introduced On the Origin of Species, which proposed the idea of evolution and a shared common ancestor for all life. However, Darwin's work didn't explain what that original ancestor was or how life began, it left that part open for biologists and chemists to explore, eventually leading to the concept of abiogenesis. Meanwhile, in the 20th century, astronomers and some theorists added complexity to the debate by revisiting and developing the idea of panspermia. To be clear, panspermia doesn't try to explain the origin of life itself, it focuses on how life might travel and spread across the universe. The main challenge with this theory is that most of its ideas can't be tested because we're limited to Earth and a few robotic missions within our solar system. We don't yet have the ability to explore far enough to see if life is truly scattered across the galaxy or universe. That said, one aspect of panspermia that we can investigate is whether life exists on asteroids or on meteorites, those asteroids that have fallen to Earth. Over the years, some researchers have claimed to find signs of life in meteorites that have landed on Earth. The issue is that once a meteorite hits the ground, it's almost instantly exposed to Earth's environment, and that means a high chance of contamination by Earth-based microbes. As a result, most studies end up determining that what they found was likely contamination rather than actual alien life. That said, a few studies have still insisted they found genuine extraterrestrial life in meteorite samples. But even then, skepticism remains strong in the scientific community. The reason? It's nearly impossible to rule out Earth-based contamination with any real certainty, not even 90%, let alone 99% or 100%. That's why in the last decade, 2 major space missions were launched to bring back untouched material directly from asteroids. NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission traveled to asteroid Bennu, touched its surface, collected ejected material, and brought it back to Earth in a sealed container in September 2023. The analysis of that pristine sample is still underway. Japan's space agency, or JAXA, also carried out the Hayabusa 2 mission, which visited asteroid Ryugu, gathered samples, and returned them safely in a sealed capsule in December 2020. JAXA opened the full asteroid sample in a clean chamber, a highly controlled environment with extremely low pressure, almost like a vacuum. After that, the material was stored in nitrogen to prevent contamination. A very small portion of the sample, just 1 square millimeter, was sent to the UK. There, it was first examined at the Natural History Museum in London, and later by the Genge research team. Which brings us to the second part. What exactly did they find? The team used a scanning electron microscope, which can reveal structures at incredibly tiny scales. One of the images shows the size reference 50 micrometers or 0.05 millimeter, which is extremely small. For comparison, a human hair is between 17 and 180 micrometers thick, meaning even a single strand of hair would completely overwhelm the size of the particles in these images. In fact, some of the images zoom in even further to scales as small as 1 micrometer. What caught the researchers' attention were tube-like formations on the sample surface, which they described as rods and filaments. One of these structures is shown in detail, displaying small indentations along its sides that resemble divided cells linked together. So naturally, the big question was, what exactly are these structures? The Genge team's first step was to rule out the obvious, that these weren't just ordinary fibers commonly found in labs, like cotton fibers, human hairs, or tiny bits from cleaning wipes or clothing. Even everyday movements can release these small fibers, so they needed to be sure they weren't seeing contamination from the lab environment itself. So the first step was to make sure they weren't just looking at something like a stray hair or a fiber from someone's sweater that accidentally landed on the asteroid sample. When they compared what they found on the sample to fibers collected from the lab environment, it was clear that none of those common lab contaminants match what they saw on the asteroid material. Instead, the researchers believed they might be looking at a type of bacteria or some form of life because the number of those rod and filament-like structures on the asteroid sample changed over time. The first examination under the electron microscope was on November 11, 2022, and they spotted 11 of these structures. By November 30th, that number had jumped to 147, and then by January 14, 2023, the count had dropped to just 36. This kind of change suggested a dynamic, growing population pointing toward living organisms. But hold on, it's not time to celebrate just yet. This brings us to part 3. How the Genge team determined that what they saw was actually Earth-based contamination. Bacteria follow well-known growth patterns. First comes the lag phase, where they adjust to a new environment. Then they enter the log or exponential growth phase, rapidly multiplying and doubling in number at regular intervals. Eventually, they hit the stationary phase, where growth stalls due to limited nutrients or space. Finally, there's the death phase, where the population declines, usually in an exponential pattern. And that's exactly what the Genge researchers observed. An initial small number, which is 11, a spike at 147, then a drop-off at 36, mirroring the typical life cycle of bacterial growth. All signs pointed to Earth bacteria that had somehow contaminated the sample, not alien life. When researchers modeled the growth pattern, they found the bacteria were doubling roughly every 5.1 days. This suggested that the contamination likely occurred during the polishing process at the beginning of November 2022. The Genge team also proposed what kind of bacteria they might be dealing with. They pointed to bacillus, a very common type found in soil, water, and even the human gut. It has a rod-like shape and is known for forming a hardy outer coating, which helps it survive extreme conditions, including the low-pressure environments found in clean chambers. Under normal circumstances, bacillus typically doubles every 120 minutes during its exponential growth phase. However, when placed in a low-pressure and stressful environment, its doubling time slows to around 6.6 days. That's quite close to the 5.1-day doubling rate observed by the researchers, further supporting the idea that what they were seeing was likely bacillus contamination. Now, you might wonder if it's still possible that life originally existed in the asteroid sample and only became active once exposed to the lab's warmer, more favorable conditions. It's a valid thought. But the sample had already spent 280 days at room temperature before the Genge team began their investigation. If any life had been present from the beginning, they would have seen far more than just 11 rods and filaments by then. In addition, after observing the drop in those rod and filament structures in January, the team repolished the sample and monitored it for another 4 months. During that time, no new rods or filaments appeared. If this had been life embedded throughout the asteroid, it should have regrown and appeared again on the surface. So yes, the result may be a little disappointing, especially if you were hoping for signs of alien life. But this leads us to the final point: what this finding actually means. You might think that contamination makes the whole result meaningless, but it still reveals 2 important things. The first takeaway might not be as thrilling, but the second one definitely is. Starting with the first point, it highlights that our current contamination prevention methods aren't effective enough. Contamination occurred in a very short amount of time, and the bacteria quickly spread across the surface. While that's frustrating when you're searching for signs of life, it also poses a bigger problem. Bacteria can alter the chemistry of the asteroid sample. For instance, they might consume existing minerals or produce new ones that were never originally there. That matters a lot when you're trying to study what asteroids are truly made of, since these rocks are like fossils from the early solar system. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. Because of that, the Genge team recommends re-evaluating current protocols to make sure future samples from missions like Hayabusa or OSIRIS-REx don't suffer the same kind of contamination. Now on to the second, far more exciting implication. Earth life can survive and even grow on material from space. Bacteria didn't just survive. They spread across the asteroid sample, even under tough, low-pressure conditions that aren't exactly friendly to life. That's a big revelation, especially when you consider the idea of humans possibly expanding to other planets someday. If we ever needed to seed a new world with life from Earth, this is real evidence that our microbes could survive and form colonies on alien terrain, even if it's completely foreign to them. It also raises serious questions about how we clean and prepare spacecraft for missions to other places in the solar system. If we're sending rovers to Mars or probes to Jupiter's moons, and we now know how easily life can take hold, then we'll need to be even more cautious about contamination. As the character Ian Malcolm once famously said, life finds a way. It's a simple statement, yet it carries so much weight. At first, it might sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, almost too wild to be true. But when you stop and think about it, it's a profound truth about the resilience and adaptability of life. No matter the odds, no matter the challenges, life finds a way to survive, evolve, and thrive. It's a concept that transcends the world of fictional dinosaurs and reaches deep into the core of nature science and even our own human experience. It's true in ways we might not even fully understand yet. Life, in all its forms, is capable of incredible feats of survival, often in the most unexpected of ways. And that's it. Thanks for tuning in to Spaceverse. From exploring the mysteries of asteroids and the potential for life beyond Earth to uncovering the challenges of contamination in space samples, we've covered some fascinating ground today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next cosmic journey.